Welcome everyone to Endeavor Evolve. So, Evolve is a journey that we started before a year. It started with an on ground event, and we have been doing Evolve online with speakers who are experts in their own fields. And for Evolve today, we have Mr. Partho Dasgupta. So, on behalf of the entire Endeavor team, I welcome you virtually, sir. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Um, Introduction while I was penning down, it has filled one entire sheet in my office, but I've tried to kind of make it concise. So, Mr. Partho Dasgupta is a general management professional with a leadership experience in various consumer industries and media management experience in print, television, and out of home. He was the first CEO of Bark India, and he's currently the president of the Advertising Club. He has earlier led startup teams, management teams at Times Now, Future Media, Economic Times, Times Multimedia, and various other organizations. He's an alumnus of IIMC, and he's here to talk to all our students and alumni about his journey, how it has been. And this would be a very, very candid conversation between Vivek Tuteja, sir, the CEO and chairman of Endeavor Careers, and Partho Dasgupta. So over to you, Vivek, sir, and looking forward to this very interesting conversation.
Thanks, Aditi. I welcome you, Partho, on the show. I hope
Thank
you're
you.
doing fine.
Thank you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long time.
I
So,
know.
hmm, as we were, get onto this, I would like to tell the students that many times one interaction does impact your life in the long term, and you really don't know at that point of time. So I met Partho maybe first time. I didn't even knew his name in my interview when he came at campus. Okay, and from there, this whole journey of somewhere, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and 1 year at times was always an entrepreneurial approach I got, and somehow it has got me here. Else on the same day, I would have been my dream company would have taken me to an international career altogether. So one conversation has such an impact on individuals. I hope, Partho, that this conversation with you impacts, at least these students and maybe as many as it can reach, and guide them in building their careers. So, welcome to the show. So first up, straight away, because the students want to know, because my our audience here is mostly ambitious young girls and boys who want to be a CEO. Okay, they are all aiming to be a CEO someday, or want to be an entrepreneur or a CFO. So they are all aiming for CXO role. You have been in CXO roles since I know you. Okay, so business head CXO roles, throughout. So maybe 16 years I have known you. And so question number one, what does it take to be a CEO? Okay, and question number two, how does CEO mind works? How does it work? How it functions?
I don't know whether I can do justice to both of these by giving all the points, but I'll try. Let me try.
Yeah.
So, what does it take to be a CEO? I think one of the big things. Each field is different, but some principles remain the same in whether you are a CEO of a media company or a cement company or a machinery manufacturing company. Some things remain the same, which is basically one. First is about empathy for people. I think that's a very, very important thing, because ultimately people make an organization, and it is very important that you look after your people. Second would be being at the top of your game, because everybody is watching you. Your shareholders, your board members, your immediate direct reports. So everybody is watching you. So be on top of your game, which is not easy. The third big thing would be is, I think, be ahead of the curve and keep learning. And because at the end of the day, you, like for example, in my last job, what I can very clearly say is I never got trained on machine learning or AI or data analytics. For example, I mean, during our days when we studied, now these were even subjects, so to speak. But I used to guide a team which would be excelling in these kind of subjects. So basically, you have to be at one step ahead, not in knowing the nitty gritties. I think it's impossible to know the nitty gritties of every field, but at least you should be knowing the broad principles and how you can apply. So whether it be such subjects or whether it be what's happening in the financial world, because you will raise funds, you will do a lot of stuff. So you have to be ahead of the curve. I would say these are the basic three things. Your second question was about what was the second question?
How does CEO mind functions?
It's very complex. I can tell you it's very complex. I think one of the biggest things is that you need to listen more and talk less, because there's a lot of absorption that you have to go on doing, whether you're in an external kind of environment or in internal environment. The second big would be, I think, again, I would say about people, that the mind is always looking at how to make your people successful, and hence you also get successful. And third, look out for lots of threats. Basically, both externally, mainly externally. That if the environment is changing, if something is coming in different part of the world, which could affect your life as well, if it comes in your part of the world. So very forward looking and keeping up reading and learning is very important.
I'll stick to your second point here. So when you say that you have to build teams, and some way you have to mentor people and mentor teams and individuals. So there are two skills here. One is hiring. I consider one of the biggest trait, whether you are successful or not, as a CEO, would be your hiring skills. How are you, and how do you nurture and grow them? Because see, when people will come to you, they might have raw talent, but you would be identifying and growing them in a direction. So is there a process to it? How do you think, or how do you go about one, hiring, two, learning and development, or training the team forward as you grow and the company grows?
Yeah, I honestly think there is no formula to it, to be honest with you. It's not, you cannot teach it in a business school, so to speak, but definitely there's a feel to it. You get a when you speak to someone, and that's why I said listening is very important. When you speak to someone, you keep on trying to judge the spark in that person, not just by your content knowledge, by the content knowledge. I think it is more by the attitude. So more, I specifically give more importance to attitude in terms of a candidate, because if you have the right attitude, I think it's very easy to pick up the skills per se. So I think it's a field. That's what I said, that you can't. So you in a conversation you pick it up. And to the second part of your question, I think it's very important to give people their space and encourage them. I think encouragement is the key, basically, to make mistakes. Don't wrap them up if they make mistakes once or twice, but they should not make the same mistake twice or thrice. It is good to make mistakes once or twice and learn the ropes and keep encouraging them. I think in a way this formula works. At least it has worked for me.
Right. So very interesting. Let's go a bit deeper here. So now, if I look at your last innings, Ba, it was ground up, scratch. So when you make it look very simple, that it is hiring, interaction, but it's also a conception of the idea and building it, and then hire the right guys and build the team.
Yeah.
And something maybe you did the second time. You also did something very similar in Times Now.
Yeah.
Not sure if Future Media was also like this, but I have a feeling Future Media would have also been.
Yeah, it's also started from a corner.
Yeah. So if we look at it, so how does let's just focus on Bath and see how did you went about this, and then see if there is something parallel in your Times innings also, and maybe in the Future Media innings as well.
I think all of these are similar, to be honest, in a very different, at a conceptual level, these are very similar. See, the whole thing starts, especially since you mentioned Bach, the whole thing starts with a situation where for example, in Bach was a measurement company, and I have no clue of what measurement was. I mean, at the time when I was hired, so to speak, and we had no money, absolutely no money. I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 4 or 5 crores that we had in our bank, and the project cost, some media reports said when I walked in, would be about 500 crores. Okay, but it didn't turn out to be 500 crores. It was about 200 crores. But I'm just saying that. So there was the basic principle is in each of these is that there'll be a lot of gray. You have to figure out how much of it is black and how much of it is white. So as you go along, you start, you start from a place and then you start visualizing. Effectively, I think that's the skill of what should I say, a founder. Vivek, you are also similar now, for founder CEO, where you know the space and you get into the track and you start figuring out how much bumpy it is and figuring out how to maneuver the whole course. It is exactly like that. So in this case, since you asked for Bach, I think one of the biggest challenges was the technology part of it, because India had not seen that kind of technology before. So, and the kind of statistical talent that we required, India didn't have as much statistical talent. So we had to import. Effectively, we imported that talent per se. And one of my lots, the first couple of years went on hiring a lot of these kind of talent from whom we have good young statisticians out here who started learning, and some of them have grown up to be very good professionals. But we have imported a lot of talent. In terms of technology, again, I mean, those kind of technologies were not there in India. So some part of it we bought, some part of it we built. We shopped around across the world to figure out what to buy from where, which by itself was a big challenge by itself. So I mean, each of these, I think the basic thing remains the same, which is you have to figure out different parts of the system. I think this is what they teach you in your engineering schools, right? That you become analytical. I don't think when you study engineering, you study all kinds of Bessel equation and Heisenberg's principle and all that. But ultimately, what you apply is your analytical sense, right? You find a problem is thrown at you, you pick up what are the elements of it and try and solve each part of it and again bring it all together. So that's the essential skill, to be honest with you. I mean, that works in every other startup.
Still not got my perfect answer. So this really solves the puzzle. But see what you need to understand, Partho, that both these innings, let's talk about Bach, it was to imagine at that point of time, there were challenges always in TAB rating. It was not, giving the perfect solution. It was a good solution. And people had tried earlier to break or create something. And media, as you know, so much credibility is required, to pull off a rating agency in any case, and media specifically is high. Similarly, when the idea of Times Now happened, NDTV and your it was written off that there's no space for another English channel. The CNBC was a king. There was BBC. There was just before the launch, I think Sahara also launched, and your CNN IBN with Rajdeep also launched. So both of them, from the visualization perspective, also was very difficult. But amazing credibility has been built. So what I think significant work as a CEO in both your outputs have been, one, the credibility that these organizations have built. And it is lasting credibility, especially in case of Times Now. Okay, so just a bit more, because the credibility cannot be just so you get the best people also and the solution also. But I think there has to be more to the DNA to build this credibility over a period of time.
Yeah, so that's exactly where the people part comes in, to be honest. I mean, if you, you can't go 100% right on people, but even if you get 97% right, and you instill the whole culture, in the beginning, for example, in the Times Now journey, you have yourself seen what was the culture in the beginning of making mistakes, trying to figure out and doing the right thing, and or everybody being in it together. I mean, we used to be drinking together. We used to be working very hard through the night, sometimes together, right? I mean, I think that culture, I think, makes things happen. As I said, I mean, there are no formula to it. There's a feel to it. There's definitely a feel to it. So you keep on when everybody has the same focus or same objective in mind, and we are all similar people. Finally, it comes through. I think it is the magic that happens when people are all alike. And I
Right.
think that as a CEO, I think my job would have been more to align people to the same thoughts
Right.
and finding solutions
Right.
rather than doing anything else. You know.
No, but it also requires a lot of brand positioning and think time
Yeah.
because you are a
So the marketing part is only a small part in the whole thing, to be honest, but it's a very
okay.
important. Of course, it's a very important part. Once you have the product and the basic stuff in place, obviously you have to project yourself well. So in each of both of these ones and many others that I have done, one definitely needs to know how to market yourself extremely well. Find your own positioning. For example, even as I mentioned, the tech part in Bach, I think that was our positioning, that we were much superior tech than the rest of the world. So, and the usual, the marketing and positioning games happen even in that. So you have to be at conferences, you have to be at, because it's a B2B product, it's not really a B2C product. Times now was more a B2C product. So you have to be in the right conferences, you have to be in the right places to project the stuff, and you have to play. To be honest, you have to play your own credibility game very, very strongly. So whoever is the leader has to play that credibility.
Right. No. Got
Yes.
it. No, no, it's a complete picture. So when now we'll just go back to your childhood. Okay, suddenly because so now we see you have such a long successful career. Growing up as a boy, what were your dreams? How was it like when you were young? Because I think 80s in India or maybe 70s, in fact, for would be so very different. We've only seen it in TV channels. Okay, one. Secondly, what kind of dreams you had? So,
So to be honest, you're right. I mean, those days the exposure to the world was very, very less. Okay, I mean, I still remember I grew up in a very middle class background in Kolkata, and but in a very good school, which was very much into academics, not much into anything else, but a huge number of students passing out. I think one of the things that made me what I am was this whole, in my school those days, it could have gone up only nowadays. If anybody here is from Kolkata, they would know there's a school called South Point High School, which in our times, every batch would have 700 students. So board exam we are giving is about 700 students. So it's the struggle for existence, the learning of how to struggle to exist and to make your head shown started there, I would rather think. I think the next big one I would think was, when I was studying, I think engineering, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how many of you have read. There's this book I read, I still remember, by this gentleman, Lee Iacocca. He was the CEO of Ford and the CEO of Chrysler later. I mean, I think that was a big turning point in my, because those days, you didn't see so much TV. Okay, I mean, there was hardly any TV, a bit of movies, but you were not exposed to so many careers and so many books, so to speak, and so much of stuff that you get to see today. No internet, of course. So I think that book by Iacocca kind of made a lot of difference to my life when I realized, and I was studying engineering. I think that gave me a lot of, so to speak, ambition, you would say, inspiration, you can also say, because I thought those days I was very clear that I would join sales, because sales was not really looked upon in a very different way at that time. And I realized that sales is very important to start your career with, because either you be in sales or be in production, you have to do something on the ground effectively when you start your career. Don't start from the air-conditioned offices, so to speak,
Right.
to get that perspective, which you will later need in life. So I would think all of this played a big part in, and obviously being not from a very extremely well-to-do kind of economic environment also gives you a bit of a kick, should I say? So, if you have dreams, you need to buy it yourself. So that helps. That helps in my view.
When did this transition, according to you, happened in your graduation, that you suddenly realized that you're more ambitious than others?
Yeah, I would think so during graduation days, and I was ambitious, but at the same time, I was very clear I'm not getting into post graduation in engineering. So
Okay.
yeah, I was very clear. So I wouldn't. Those days there used to be. I think, I think it's still the gate is
Mhm.
the thing for doing MTech and all
Yeah.
that. I never sat for that. So I was very clear in third year that I have to crack the campus interviews, and I think I was the first person to get a job in the campus in the batch.
Right.
Four of us, if I may, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
Third year, mid third year, or I think it was December of the year, whatever. So we had jobs, and after that it was a cakewalk because last 1 year you don't study and don't you just enjoy
Correct.
life. So
Yeah, those things don't change in college.
yeah, it should be the same. So I think yeah, you are right. During the graduation days is where it started. The reality started dawning on me.
Right. So then, how did MBA happen? Because you went into a
I
campus job, and how did you realize you want to get into MBA?
Yeah, so my first job was Union Carbide. Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, it was a very blue chip US multinational those days. Of course, I joined them post Bhopal, so don't ask me any Bhopal questions. I don't know.
Yeah.
So one should be clear. So it was a great company to learn. I mean, and I was put in the materials department. I still remember because the group HR head thought that my commercial sense is better, and I was not too keen on typical engineering maintenance jobs, which happen in factories. And I was in Hyderabad and Kolkata, and that is when I think it started before, but that is also when I realized that, to be honest, that engineering jobs don't pay. Engineering industry doesn't pay beyond a point, and you need to switch and do some pivots in your career so that. And one of the things was that you need to do an MBA, an MBA from a good school. Otherwise, it's not so important. So yeah, around that time.
MBA in 91, you know, how many seats were there in India?
No,
Maybe
there were quite a few seats. The
ABC would be 120 seats each, I guess.
150, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
quite around that. So in a way, obviously the number of people who were trying to get in also must be lower than now, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was even those days it was very competitive. I still remember it was very competitive because also the opportunities those days were much lesser. Don't forget that because now, see, at that time, consulting and investment banking were considered the biggest ones, the, so to speak, the top placement kind of things. The whole tech sector had not appeared. Okay, the what you get today, the TCSs of the world and all that were coming in engineering campuses, but the whole numbers games were quite different. Both the demand supply numbers games were different. So the opportunities, I think, now are much better. But yeah, number of seats were much lower at that point of time. To that
Yeah.
extent.
So, how was your IIM Calcutta experience? What kind of impact did it have?
Uh,
How was IIM Calcutta in 90s? Early 90s. How was it?
it was I would think it's as good as today. I went there recently for some. Uh, uh, they have published a whole case study on Park, a strategy case study on Park. So the first day they
Wow.
do the class with the students.
Mm.
They invited me to be in the class. So the some of the old blocks are the same, but now much better infrastructure. I could see that some very swank buildings and stuff like that. I would think the life is the same. I mean, whatever I could pick up, I was chatting with some students and all that. Life still remains the same. Uh, yeah, so I don't think too much has changed apart from the people there and some amount of better facilities and that kind of thing. I mean, the canteen remains the same, which is where you spend most of the time. So that kind of thing.
How did I Am Calcutta impact you, change you, transform you, and how it has gone over the years? And maybe if some lessons would have been you would have carried for life. So what was the key change you saw that maybe I Am Calcutta made in you from the long term perspectives?
See, this is why I also wanted to do an MBA, to be honest, and I think which is what the IIMs deliver, which is they give you a great perspective. What you would have, I think, if you had not done a IIM thing, I mean, you would have taken 10 to 12 years to understand how the industry works. The perspective of people, the perspective of finance perspective. So that whole thing, I think, especially IMC was very much quant, right? I mean, it is they get a lot of more engineers in the batch, and it was very quant oriented. So I think, and that slight bit of kida in me, if I can say so, of having a creative side, which is what made me do both finance and marketing, and ultimately I preferred to get into the marketing side more. And thankfully see how the world has rolled out. I mean, there's a lot of quant in marketing now. Earlier, creativity meant mainly advertising and stuff like that. Now it is not just advertising, it is a lot of data science. There's a lot of other things that play. So it gave me, I think the biggest thing that it gave me was the perspective. I think which I'm really thankful for, because that keeps you running faster. You know why one is saying at that level. I'm just saying why one is saying what is they are saying. So it just helps you. That's it.
So post IMC, what was your general first job, and how have you?
So I mean, no. So it is like this. So I moved to Bombay. I think to I was the marketing head for CRISIL. You won't believe it. So CRISIL is again a financial rating company, which was launching some information products those days. Okay, and that, because I already came with some experience of engineering industries and stuff like that, so that helped me. And yeah, so through that, and then I joined media, I think, which was Times, and even within Times, I did quite a few roles. And I think the biggest thing in Times is that I did quite a few assignments, and not just typically people spend 25 years in Times doing only one job. And I think in those 7 years or so, I think 3 or 4 jobs I did. And of the last 2 they were totally general management jobs. And I think I'm thankful to Times because they gave me that exposure. And from there on, it has only gone up in strength, I can say.
So if I see your career started in marketing and then you moved into general management, but overall you have been in let's say a media or marketing, the companies where obviously so you have the brand plays a crucial role. So how has marketing and advertising evolved over since maybe 93 you walked out to 2021 here? How has marketing and advertising evolved over these 2 decades or 3 decades now? Yeah.
Tremendously. I think one of the big, I mean, if you go back to Scotland study, one is the products have diversified very, very differently. So be it a media product, be it any other product for that matter, or a service, things have changed drastically, obviously. So that side, the big part is the media fragmentation has happened. I mean, in 90, there used to be only a couple of channels, right? I mean, it used to be Doordarshan, then the Z TVs of the world came in, the Star TVs of the world came in, but it was only few. I mean, you could count it in your fingers, and not like the surfeit of channels that you have, 600 odd channels that you have today. There was no internet. Okay, so the speed of communication was very, very different, right? So the whole paradigm has changed. The kind of creativity you saw, there was in the beginning, I mean, especially in the early 90s, I remember mostly the good ads would be English ads, which now when you look back, you realize that most of the country wouldn't even understand, right? So the whole regionalization started, that people started looking at the hyper-local markets and tailoring advertising purely based on that. And that's where you can see more media channels also came up. This whole regional channel business started around that time. So things have started, the whole thing about how do you handle PR and communication, for stakeholder management, for government, for everything else, even your own internal stuff in large companies. That has completely changed. I mean, I don't remember 90s used to be that tough. in Union Carbide, since I mentioned you, we used to get updates in a VHS tape, and works at the manager, the big man those days. So he would get the tape on his dark as a mail, and we would be told assemble at the canteen at 3 o'clock. So across the country, everybody at 3 o'clock watches the same tape, which is the communication. So which is like our chairman those days, Vijay Gokhale, would address, and it would go in like that. So he would record it, send it out after 2 or 3 days, whenever. So it would be scheduled, and so that across the country everybody hears the news together. So it was very different. I mean, for example, this whole thing of, I'm sure all of you guys are hooked onto Netflix of the world, the Facebooks of the world, and the Instagrams of the world. The way the recommendation engines have worked, the Amazon, pure shopping, right? The way the recommendation engines work, it's a huge change in marketing. That it is not by influencing your mind through advertising, whether cognitive or emotional. It is through data that I am figuring out what you do and what you don't do, what you prefer and what you don't prefer, and figuring out a way to send you things. I'm sure you guys use Netflix. The way they target you fantastically to say that 99% likely that you would like it. So, and most often than not, they are absolutely bang on right based on your behavior that they pick
Very
up.
interesting.
I would say huge change. I mean, I think 90s to now we
I think we have dwelled reasonably into your professional career. So I would like to know more about your personal career also, because how did you get married? How has your married life been? Managing family. How it has turned out to be for you?
So we celebrated 25th year of marriage last year.
Wow.
2019, so 94 is when we got married. Good. I think it's a very important part of your overall life. I think to have a good family life, because it gives you a certain amount of stability, in my view, and a bit of a peace, I can say, and happiness, which is very important to balance because in your corporate life there will be ups and downs. I mean, you can never have a completely always things going good. There will be enemies as you grow in your career, and there will be a lot of stuff. So it's important that the family stands by, and for me, I've been lucky.
Right. So how has parenting been for you? And how different are you as a parent compared to your parent? Because I think there has been a generational change I have seen generally because a lot of orthodoxy goes down, and you move into metros, open societies. So how different a parent are you compared to your parent, and how has parenting been for you?
My parents and me, I mean, I would think, my parents hardly knew which class I was in, so I think after class 7 or something, my mother gave up on me, because till class 7, I think she used to guide me. And after that, I have been on my own. And my father's, honestly, if you asked him suddenly that which class is Partho in, I mean, he would take some time to think about it, that kind of thing. I am definitely not that. I definitely know what is going on in my daughter's life. My daughter is 20 plus, so I definitely know what's happening in her career, her studies, whatever. But I also don't believe in very much, I see some of my friends my age who are too much into it. I don't believe that is right, because I think we should give them space and try to encourage them more than anything else. And but at the same time, I think very important, which I believe in and I try to do, is to keep the communication on with the child. So that we get to know whatever is required. That I think that is very important in my view, and which is what I try to do.
Correct. So other than work and family, I know that you are a techie, right? And you have some, a lot of passions, so tell us more about your passions other than your work, Obviously we like to know about your gadgets, but yeah, still,
Especially post the age of 40. And I strongly believe, and I suggest this to many people. post the age of 40, there are 2-3 things that you have to keep on doing. One is you have to, every 2-3 years, you need to reinvent yourself, because things are changing so fast. And the second thing is that you need to develop passions which is beyond your work, absolutely beyond your work, because life gets so maddening and so much of pressures come onto you at the professional level, mainly. It's important to have some madness to keep yourself sane, and I'm saying this in all seriousness. So I have been so to speak, a gadget and a gadget freak, I would say, from younger age itself. I mean, starting from those first Nokia communicators, which used to be almost like a computer those days, which was not a smartphone. But communicators, if you remember, there used to be those long stuff which you could flip open. And so those were the so-called high-tech gadgetry that you could get those days, early 90s and all. So from those to even now, I think on two sides, on different kind of gadget, I am one of the first early adopters, and you can check with me what is happening. So whether it be a Google Home or Alexa or anything, whenever it can, or even an Apple Watch, I would think one of the first people in India who would have bought it. I am hugely into cars, and you know that whole madness of mine. I used to love when I was in a child even tinkering with cars. My father's Fiat, he wouldn't know that I've split the muffler open to get some more noise and more pickup in the car. Where those days you could tune it yourself, the whole air fuel mixture. And he would tell me that it's consuming too much of fuel. So let's just take it to the mechanic, and it will come back from the mechanic all very sane. But I would again tune it during one of my morning stuff, So from those days till now, I mean, I love speeding. I am a speed freak. So every other Sunday morning, you'll see me on the ceiling, kind of a thing. So I love my vehicles, and I spend a lot of time on them. Again, knowing them and playing with them effectively. So.
Any particular role models, in growing up? And
as I said, as I was growing up, it would have been Arcoca those days. Over the later years, it's Elon Musk. I love his madness.
Right.
He speaks I don't know whether it is his mind or whatever. He has audacious dreams,
Yeah.
and he makes it happen. So, I mean, for the last few years, I've been following him very intently. I love that guy. He makes all kinds of mistakes also, but still I love that guy.
So, you have had a small stint as an entrepreneurship also.
Yeah.
Right. So entrepreneurship versus corporate, that's a debate which students keep getting into, and they get confused, and they, I tracked so many careers, and out of them, maybe half of them at any given point of time are always working on some concept. So how does one know, whether it is entrepreneurship or corporate, which is more fruitful? How does one go about it?
See, the first thing I must say, is see, entrepreneurship. See, in a way, whenever in any of these jobs where you're doing startups, it's again like an entrepreneurship, okay? But it is not entrepreneurship in the true sense, in the sense you don't own it, as one would want to define. So in my view, I mean, it all depends where you get your kick or where you really love being. It may be in either. Okay, so very important is, and this is I am saying especially for your students basically because they are in that stage, is don't be enamored by the romanticism of entrepreneurship. There is a lot of romanticism that goes on. It is almost like those good old Satyajit Ray movies, where black and white people are not able to eat, but they love being in love, that kind of thing. So I would definitely not recommend anyone to do anything like that. Yeah. So you need to be practical. If something is not working out, just get out of it. It is very, very important to understand the signs. Whether you should go on trying. I am very much in for, but don't just be at it just because you think that you are romantic. So don't. So that's my take. So be listen to yourself. I mean, listen to what it tells you from inside, and don't go by what people say. And
Yeah.
if it gives you satisfaction, do it.
I think extremely well put and the right lesson, because see, a lot of guys are chasing entrepreneurship because they're chasing a dream or a story, or they're creating a story, or the romanticism of it, and bootstrapping and stress, and you're not really understanding whether what they are creating there is a sufficient value for the customer or the long run. I think extremely well put here. So at this, I think we'll move to the rapid fire. I think we're almost reaching. Though I have a couple of questions still pending, so I'll figure out if I can fit them in. But quickly, so let's before I hand over to Aditi and she can ask questions to students. 3 books, new shows, you would recommend, documentaries.
Recently, my reading has gone down a lot thanks to so much of video watching that happens. I was just thinking about it the other day. That reading has gone down a lot. The last one I read was something on this whole facial recognition thing that is happening around the world, right? The politics of facial recognition and how it is being used, which is a big thing. I don't know whether you are following it, because I think starting with China and the rest of the world, including India now, there's a very strong social change happening with this whole facial recognition thing.
Yeah.
They say, I mean, how it goes unnoticed, like in London, every time you go out, there's a statistic somewhere, I think you get photographed 40 times or something like that. So, I mean, every other street corner has a camera clicking you, that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm just saying, so no particular news shows, but I love watching Shekhar Gupta's analysis of news. I subscribe to on YouTube. But otherwise, I have no. I'm a bad brand consumer because I have no loyalties, so to speak. I fleet between different things depending on who's covering what when. But when it comes to analysis, Shekhar's would be one which I really love. I love the analysis what New York Times does. I regularly try to pick up from there. So some things like that.
Right. So 3 traits to be successful in a career.
3 traits. Yeah. I think from a career point of view, I would, something that I haven't touched before in the CEO thing that you asked is, I think very important to develop your emotional quotient more than IQ. I think the EQ is extremely important than IQ. Be ahead of the curve in terms of what you do. You need not know everything at depth. You need to know a lot. That's the second big one. Third is, I didn't cover it also. You need to think big. I think, especially in India, we lack thinking big as an attitude. Think global, think big. So look at the world at your marketplace, not your state, not your city as your marketplace. I think that's very, very important.
Right. Yeah. 3 values to be a happy soul. You're always smiling, happy. So 3 values to be happy soul.
One is don't judge.
Okay.
Don't judge people because everybody's contexts are different. Okay.
Correct.
You may have your own views, but don't judge people. So that is, I think, very, very important. Let people pursue their dreams. I think, especially in a work front, I would think, even in a family front, everybody has their own dreams. Let people pursue that and look beyond.
Right. Your favorite destination?
Oh, if it comes to cities, it's New York or London.
Okay.
I love busy cities.
Vacation?
Vacation would be Switzerland.
Switzerland.
There's a town in Germany called Baden-Baden, which I think was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And the Autobahns of Germany, because it has no speed limits.
Go back to cars. How do you plan to retire?
I don't think I will retire.
Yeah, you won't retire again. And so, where are you heading now?
When you say retire, it is about mind retiring, right? I don't want my mind to retire.
Correct. Correct. So, where are you heading now? Where is your career taking now? You know,
So
now that the bark is also over and you have achieved what you wanted.
now
So, where
what
are you heading now?
what I do is pure CEO level consulting for some of the broadcasting companies. There's something in
Hmm.
also as well.
Okay.
I would like to see it as more from a perspective point of view than very operational kind of stuff, unless somebody can give me a Elon Musk kind of audacious project.
Yeah.
So that would obviously interest me.
Interesting. So, thanks, Partho. Very interesting conversation. I'll just, wind up with my lessons which I learned from this conversation. Number one would be empathy. Okay, empathize, understand the people, develop an emotional quotient. Number two would be to dream big. Number three would be to initiate, be ready to make mistakes, and decision making. It's very important. It's the process is important, but the right decision making is extremely important. Don't judge, let team make mistakes. Okay. And finally, I would say that exit at top, always. Yeah. So these five would be, I think, the key learnings. Yes, to add to it, continuous learning. I think you said that the team grows if they are learning. So so if you have to grow the team, they have to continuously learning. So to that extent, you have to be continuously learning as you are going ahead. So I think that is again a very interesting input, that even if you reach the CEO level, in fact, the learning requirement changes because you have to maybe adapt and be fast it. So thanks a lot, Partho.
Pleasure.
So,
It's been an absolute pleasure.
so let the mic to Aditi, and let Aditi connect you to the students and see what the questions they have for you. Right? Thanks. Sir.
Thank you so much, Vivek. So without wasting time, because we have some lovely questions that our students have asked, um, I'll take the first question from Jeenal Parmar. She's here with us, but she doesn't want to be on camera, so I'm asking on her behalf. She says that I am a working professional and not able to balance time for my preparation, practice and mocks. And my aim is to get into TIS, but I'm quite demotivated because of the lack of practice and preparation. So, how can I overcome this?
I think don't. I mean, the whole thing is about uh, don't start thinking that way. First is change your mental frame from not being able to do this to how do I find time to do this, and because you have to. Yeah, you have to. I'm saying you have to. You have to change your mind frame. Figure out a way to take your mind to a different space and look at it positively. Right now, I think you're looking at it slightly negative.
Right. Avni Raghuvanshi, you want to go next and pose your question to sir?
Yes, ma'am, sure. Hello, sir. It was a great talk show, I have to say. And, sir, about that thing which you said, romanticism of entrepreneurship, it kind of trigged me too much. So, sir, about that, with all the startup buzz going on these days, what I think the major mistakes people do right now is into investing and at the right time or at the wrong time of investing. So, as you have been into advertising and marketing as well, what would you suggest would be the right time to boost up a startup sales when it comes to advertising? When is the right time to invest into it?
So I see a lot of people making mistakes. I think it's a great question actually of me.
Thank you,
So
sir.
a lot of people, like for example, just a few days back, one of my ex-colleagues was chatting with me. He's from Hyderabad. So so he was going headlong because he thinks in his own heart that something is the product that he's trying to do is much in demand in the market. And my advice to him was don't go headlong. rather test market it in two types of cities, one a metro city and one a tier one city, and see for 3 months how it goes, and then only start pumping in money. So very similar to what you are talking about. Because marketing is not cheap. It is quite expensive depending on what kind of markets you're trying to handle. And it can sometimes become, like for example, in a media product, distribution is many a times the biggest cost, apart from one or two categories. So I'm just saying, decide on whether there is appetite, what is your market that you can serve, and then look at spending those dollars. It is an expensive proposition, so be careful.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Avni.
Hartu, if I can add,
Yeah.
how do you calculate ROI for these guys? They are sitting in limited budgets, so they do they look at only from the sales ROI, or they have the freedom to execute some branding campaigns also?
See, both are important, right? I mean, there are multiple measures. So sales ROI is only one of them. The whole awareness measures that happens, the brand health studies that happen. So any big brand does it. So because many a times you advertise mainly to keep the salience of the brand high. It may not be transactional. You saw what happened during this whole COVID period, right? I mean, most brands rather went off the advertising market per se. They stopped their advertising because sales was not happening. Whereas one brand, I'm just giving you one example, is Amul, which kept advertising. Okay, I mean, it didn't reduce its advertising spends at all. So, and these are typical cases when resurgence happens. Any brand which has high brand salience always it helps them. So there are 3-4 very standard measures to answer your question: the brand awareness, the brand health studies, and all that, which one keeps on doing to see whether things are working.
Right. So taking it from there, I am combining two questions here. So one is from Deep Raval. He asks that what will be the future of media and advertising sector due to automation in coming years, and also the huge digital transformation, and how will it affect future jobs and roles of MBAs? That is his question. And I would want to combine it with Prateek Agarwal's question. Very interesting. He says that will the loss of human touch and feel as a result of digitization of businesses, organizations, and educational systems become the new norm?
Interesting, very, very interesting. Okay, so it's a good point. Love to talk about it as much time that you can. So, see what is getting affected and what has already got affected and will get affected more is mainly the distribution. See, the so-called automation and digitization and all that are doing two things. One is disintermediation and distribution. It still doesn't change the fact that you have to market your product, you have to sell your product. Okay, that still requires your MBAs to do it. It doesn't change the fact that a media product is ultimately a creative product. That cannot be digitized. Creativity cannot be digitized. Creativity cannot be automated. So that is where the human touch will always remain. To understand how the behaviors of for example, your age group's behavior versus my age group's behavior, and what product suits where, that requires a human touch, that requires a human application. Data science, automated models will give you what people are wanting, but how do you deliver that? That still remains. So yes, some parts of it will get affected, but that will give you much better inputs, more for input from an input point of view to show your creativity. So creativity cannot be automated.
That's an amazing point. Ritik, you want to go next on camera and pose your question?
Since Sir has been CEO for more than a decade, so this would be, he would be the appropriate person to answer this. Sir, is it true that only a person with who is working in a sales or marketing function becomes a CEO? Suppose a finance guy may become a CFO, but he may never become a CEO in a product-based company. So, how true is it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there is any bias in the industry towards that. It all depends. I mean, you have to excel in what you do and get a larger perspective. I mean, if you remain a CFO and think only finance, then you have a problem. But if you can think for the organization, you are definitely in for that CEO role.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ritik. So I think I'll take one last question, which is from Neha Tripathi. She says that due to COVID-19, we see majority of advertisements taking place by home, and they are made into videos from their homes, which is great in cutting down the cost. But what do you think? Will this bring a new evolution in branding and advertisement after COVID-19? And what are your major takeaways from the current form of advertising because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so it all depends. Some ads can be is fine to do from home kind of productions, okay, and yes, it reduces cost, which is great news for any brand because everybody is concerned about costs at this point of time. But there are certain, for example, I'm just saying, if you have to shoot a car ad showing a beautiful life and the whole family in it and all that, you can't do it from home, right? I mean, you would like to, you have to go outdoors to do it. So some things may be possible, the home kind of setting and a shoot, very low cost shoots, but not all. So there will be a good mix. I think what will come out of this whole COVID situation is good amount of rationalization of costs, and this is not just about shooting ads, starting from your how many people go to office every day and stuff like that, the real estate part of it, to all of this. So there will be a good rebalancing, if I may say so, that will happen post this. I think people will learn a lot of extra expenditures that they were doing, and also, but some things will remain the same. I don't think it will change too much.
Yes, so I'll take a question from Lalita Prasunna. You did cover it a bit when you guys were talking, but she says that, Mr. Partho's profile is nothing but a perfect epitome of excellence. So what are your thoughts on, or rather the turning points that decided that you want to switch from mechanical engineering to management?
To be honest, it's a pure practical thing. As I said somewhere, that I realized at some point that engineering jobs don't pay. And I had too many dreams to fulfill, and also beyond the point, they don't give you too much of challenge, and as in, of course, they do give challenges in their own way, but not that I wanted. I wanted a larger perspective thing. So obviously that made me switch, and I realized the only way to do that is go through an MBA.
Right, right, right. So just plugging in one more question here, because a lot of students had asked that. It's a common question. So there's one that I've noted. It's from Sonam. She says, is there anything like the right time to do an MBA?
No, like for example, I did it after 3 years of passing out engineering. So in fact, I would say, and though it may not be a very popular, or most people may not say so, but I would say 1 or 2 years of experience and then doing an MBA is good, because it gives you what one faces in a real job, and that perspective helps. But I know that mostly people do straight out of college, I mean straight out of graduation. But I think I personally would think a couple of years of experience is good. Like for example, I think even now, if I'm not mistaken, IMD used to give preference for working people at one time. I don't know what it is now.
Maybe Vivek sir, if you could add your views there and then take it from there too.
I don't think so. There's any perfect time to do MBA. Honestly, I have recommended students to do MBA at 40, 42 also. See, everybody's career takes a different trajectory. What comes in your life at that point of time and how you are growing as an individual paves the way. So I think what Partho essentially also is saying that, you have to grow as an individual and as a career. So, what is it you hand at that point of time, and where is it taking you versus, is this the right time to take that jump and go further? So what's in your hand is always important. What is happening around you is always important, because so maybe if you went back 5 years back into a B school, you would have been suddenly talking of digital marketing and social media marketing. Now those things are outdated, right? Today you will going in, you will be talking about a completely different approach, which Partho just referred to us when he said that, the targeting has become so like Netflix and stuff. So it evolves. So where you are at that point of time in your career, what have you grown? So, and it can all, yeah, it's required, I think, at some point of time people go for 2 MBAs, okay, but might be required also for some people, because as management also the subject changes over a period of time. So because, yeah, as Partho said, because what the essential would be same: the decision making, case study, the thought process, how to evaluate a business, build businesses, functions will be changed, same, but across the modules will be different. If I go and see my MBA books, it will be very different than what we read, right? Okay.
So I'm getting a lot of messages in my Zoom chat here saying, please thank Sir on our behalf for the lovely conversation. So yes, I just did.
Absolutely a pleasure. Beautiful questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vivek sir, any final note of?
No, I will just, two things I'll do. One is I will take up, just round up my lessons again, because I had to learn a few more lessons in the questions. And two is I like Partho to give a final message to students. How and should they build their career. Okay. And just before that, my final question to Partho. Partho, do you consider you are successful? And how do you define success?
No, I mean, success is a journey. There is no, I would think it's a cliched thing, but still, is a it is it doesn't. I mean, you don't reach a milestone and say that I'm successful. I mean, it doesn't work like that. I mean, there are many more things to be done. So there's no finality to it. To be honest, yeah, it's a perspective again. So yeah.
One final message to students before I sum it up, because every point you are making, I'm adding to the list.
So my big thing, which I don't think I spoke enough of, but I did mention again, guys. I mean, especially for us to where we stand today in India. I mean, it may not have been 20 years back or 30 years back. Think big. Think absolutely global. Whatever you think of, think global, because world should be our marketplace, not just India. I think that perspective should change, even in these schools, even in even schools, so to speak. I think that's the perspective that should change in this education system now. So again, think big, and the next one is learn to live happy, and be with people. I think people are important to make friends, especially at the stage that you are. Every type of person is important in your life. Please don't discount anyone saying that he's not up there or he's not there. Every person is important in your life, in different forms and different points of time. So make more friends and think big. That's it.
Right. Got it. So thanks, Partho. Wonderful conversation, and I think tremendous value, in just, these 45 minutes of 1 hour, you packed in. I'll just summarize it once again and put my learnings in perspective. Number one, think big, dream big, think global. Okay. Number two would be empathy, having empathy, emotional quotient with people around you, not being judgmental, that's a key to build teams and be successful. Decision making is the key, because a lot of things go in decision making, and that differentiates maybe the CEO, a winner CEO, knowing the future. So maybe the idea, tracking where things are going or where the technology is going, or maybe seeing things from a futuristic perspective rather than what has happened in past. Don't be scared to make mistakes. Continuous learning, life, take it as a journey, so don't be so persistent, but it's a journey, adapt. And one thing which very clearly came out from you is that change is permanent, so things are changing, so be ready to adapt and flexible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Partho. I think that sums a wonderful learning experience. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining once again on behalf of our entire team. Thank you so much, students, for joining in. And like we say, dream, endeavor, and evolve. Thank you so much, Partho sir. Thank you so much, Vivek sir.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.